Hello again, everybody. Welcome back to the Smooth Thrills Radio Hour. Coming to you from Old East Dallas, as always, I'm your host, Jason Rutledge. So, just like we did back in Series 2 with Manhunter, in this episode we're going to take a look back at the beginning of a massive movie franchise. The movie is The Thin Man. Now, maybe you're not familiar with this movie, maybe you haven't seen it, and if that's the case, I want you to pause this right here and go watch it immediately. I promise you, it's well worth your time. Nathan and Katie are back to dive into the deep end of the movie detective pool. But first, is everybody comfortable? You got your snacks ready to go? Anyone need something to drink?
What's the gag?
You know as much about it as I do.
Have a cocktail.
No, I don't care for any.
I said have a cocktail.
I guess he wants us to have a cocktail.
Did we talk about that Buddy Hackett's son is in both Hot Dog the movie and Hamburger the motion picture?
Huh. How about that?
Jason's face.
That's
It's
typecasting.
true. Well,
You know, maybe in
Hot
food-themed
Dog the
movies.
movie isn't about, eating
Hot
hot
dogs.
dogs, but, in some
No,
there's a hot dog
that's a ski
sequence.
movie,
But
isn't it?
beside that,
If I remember right?
yes.
A ski movie called Hamburger the Movie?
No, that's the other movie.
Oh.
Hot Dog is the ski movie.
Still doesn't make sense.
Like hot dogging, like skiing. It's a style.
No, I've never been skiing.
Well, I haven't either, but I've watched plenty of sex comedies to inform me of these things.
Philo Vance? What is Philo Vance? What is this name? It sounds familiar. I can't quite place it, though.
Philo Vance?
Yeah.
Did I reference the wrong William Powell detective series?
May have.
We'll talk about a little bit about that later. I'll delve into it.
Please do.
He also did 4 detective films prior to the Thin Man films. And that was his character, Philo Vance.
Oh.
Kennel Murder Case, which
Hey.
also features Asta, the dog. And that was the last Philo Vance movie he did.
I was unaware they'd worked together previously.
Yes. As did he and Myrna Loy. But, yeah, also, if you watch the trailer for The Thin Man, he plays his character Philo Vance and the character of Nick Charles. And he's within a book. The Dashiell Hammett book is on display, and it's a split screen, and he walks out of the book to talk to Philo Vance. So it's kind of a passing of the torch a little bit.
That's confusing.
Yeah, but back then it wouldn't have been. Like, he had just done the last, not the last Philo Vance film, but the last one he did was the year prior, which was like in October, I think it released.
What studio put those out, the Philo Vance movies? Was that also MGM?
MGM did some later on, but the ones that Powell did were primarily Paramount, and then the Kennel Murder Case was actually Warner Brothers. It's weird, like there's so many actors that played that character and different studios had hands in it, so it was like literally optioning books and then adapting them.
Well, there is a reason I'm asking about which studio did it, because what occurred in 1934 was that MGM felt like they had a problem on their hands. They just spent a gob of money to get the movie rights to the latest Dashiell Hammett novel. They weren't really sure what they were going to do with it. The director they brought on board had confidence in the project, and he put together a cast he was really enthusiastic about, but the studio brass felt like the project was doomed. They felt like the leading man was too old. The leading lady was more known for playing exotics, and it just didn't seem like it was coming together. But they scrounged up a little money, scheduled out a 2-week shoot, and then sent the director, W.S. Van Dyke, on his way, thinking at the very least he can deliver the movie on time and on budget, and they can get it over with. Little did they anticipate, they were launching a juggernaut that would make its money back 7 times over, spawn 5 sequels, and give us one of the most iconic movie duos probably outside of Batman and Robin, Nick and Nora Charles. Enter The Thin Man. Welcome everyone to the Smooth Thrills Radio Hour. We are indeed talking about the 1934 comedy mystery, The Thin Man. And the reason I was asking about the studio is because it couldn't have been through MGM because they didn't think Powell was a young enough guy anymore to play detectives. Louis B. Mayer was very much against it, and he was against Myrna Loy being cast in this too.
Yeah. But Van Dyke petitioned for both of them because he had just directed them in Manhattan Melodrama. And they had non-comical roles, but he observed their chemistry in between takes and how they got along. And he thought, that's who I want in this. And he fought for them. And it works. It really does.
I don't think Myrna Loy had done a comedy before this, had they? Really?
But no, she was not known for comedic roles at all. Mostly serious stuff, yeah.
No, they definitely, like, having never seen them in anything before, they definitely have very good chemistry together.
The story I'd always heard was that Van Dyke was at a party with Myrna Loy and he pushed her into a swimming pool to see how she'd react. And based on her reaction, he thought, she can do comedy. I want her in this movie. I don't know if I believe that or not. That's the usual story that goes around about how he picked her for this. It's probably one of those things that got made up later. There's maybe a little bit of truth to it, probably not. I don't know.
It's like the old-timey version of Michael Bay making Megan Fox wash his cars.
Did we really go there? Did we really go to that reference?
I went there.
God damn. Welcome to the final episode of Smith Note.
Yes, Michael Bay is going to come cancel our podcast.
Welcome to the death knell. That's entirely possible. I mean, they had these crazy Hollywood parties back then. Who knows?
And when I say that they spent a bunch of money just to get the rights, that wasn't a joke. They had given Dashiell Hammett $20,000, which translates to about $410,000 in 2021 dollars. So he made some bank off of this stuff. This one and the Maltese Falcon and the Glass Key, all three. He basically retired from writing after that. This was his last novel. He did some consulting. He did a little bit of script work here and there, but he never wrote another novel again. I don't think he even wrote any more short stories after that.
No, I mean, he wrote the story for the first sequel after The Thin Man.
After The Thin Man, yeah.
And then was like, a consultant pretty much. And that's the thing, is that book was released like in January. When did this movie come out that year? It was like 5 months later?
Well, this was a May 25th release. Yeah.
Wow.
They turned it around fast. Yeah. Like I said, they only shot for maybe 12 days. Somewhere between 12 and 18, depending on who you ask. But it was a really tight schedule. Well,
I mean, he was known for one takes, so...
The budget was only about $250,000, which is huge, really. But, it's not as much as they spent on the sequels, certainly. I think by the time they got to the last movie in the series, they were spending $1.6 million, $1.5 million, $1.6 million on each one of these things.
How many are there total?
There's 6 of them.
I didn't know it was a series. Like, I had
it wasn't
never heard of it
intended that way, but it made so much damn money, they really felt like they had no other option to make more of them, even though they had no source material at that point. Because, like I said, there were no other Thin Man stories. None. I think After the Thin Man might have been based partially on one of Hammett's old shorts that he published in, what was the name of the magazine? The Black Page, something like that. I know that Another Thin Man was based on The Farewell Murder, which is one of his short stories. I think they may have taken bits and pieces out of them.
Yeah.
To make the rest.
Why did they go with The Thin Man? Like, why is that the title?
Because it's
Other than he is a man.
No, it's not Powell, though. It's the guy that he's investigating.
Wynant.
Is missing or murdered. So as a franchise, it's confusing to utilize that same title, aside from like After the Thin Man. That makes sense. But like when you have like movies down the road that are like The Thin Man Comes Home, audiences would confuse him, William Powell, Nick character, as being the Thin Man.
That's what I would have assumed.
It's kind of like the Frankenstein versus Frankenstein's monster sort of a mix-up. Is it? No, that's not.
That's a good,
One's supposed to work that way, but then you're kind of stuck with it because you don't want to change the title, obviously, and people might not go see it because they might not know what they're... It's one of those things.
Right.
So it was very much an unplanned franchise. They did not have intention going in to make a bunch of movies.
So, I'm assuming these stories were popular, thus why they were adapted. So would this be equivalent to now, like when a blockbuster like becomes a sleeper hit, and before it's even out of theaters, they have the sequel already optioned, and it's going to move forward because it made all that money? This is kind of a similar situation to that, where with its
Mhm.
popularity, they were like, we might as well continue it.
Sure.
So-
They cranked out Thin
I
Man
wish I-
movies regularly. They cranked one of these out every 2 to 3 years up and through 1947. And I really think if the last movie hadn't been the
wow.
only one to lose money, they may have kept going with it until everybody dropped dead, probably.
I wonder if we'll ever see like future adaptations of it.
Well, there was a
There
TV
was.
series in the late 50s with Peter Lawford and Phyllis Kirk, and
Mhm.
they're serviceable enough, but the chemistry is like, do you like the characters or do you like the actors that inhabited the characters?
Right.
Mhm.
For me, it's more the actors, their chemistry is.
Yeah, I get that. I could definitely see myself watching the five if the two of them who play Nick and Nora are in the others. I could see me watching them just based solely on their chemistry and performance alone.
Right. Yeah, it's not as transferable as like a Sherlock Holmes character
Right.
mystery kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Michael Cera and Kat Dennings.
Yeah, I didn't even pick up on the fact that their names were Nick and Nora, and then I thought of that movie.
That one just goes off the rails. There's really no mystery in
No,
that
not
one.
at all.
No.
There's a playlist though,
There,
and I
yeah,
heard it's infinite.
yes,
Was,
it's
there
still
was
going.
like
Yeah.
when there a 2012, I want to say a TV movie maybe called Return of the Thin Man that was kind of cobbled together out of bits and pieces of old short stories and something like that.
Oh, it might. I don't know. Maybe
There may be a good reason why I don't
there
remember
might be
it at
quite
all.
a few TV adaptations that I'm unaware
Oh,
of.
probably. I wouldn't be shocked if this was like a straight to TBS TNT television
Yeah.
movie scenario.
Yeah, especially like in the 90s, there was a very retroactive sense in bringing back a lot of that stuff from the 30s and 40s on television.
And like this one can be done because I always think about, and I'm not saying these are similar, but I know I get the impression they were mysteries. My grandmother used to watch I gotta think of what they're called. Something Chan, and there were like
Charlie
a
Charlie
bajillion-
Chan movies?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
seems like and there were tons of those. And
Far
it's
more
like,
than we
I
should have
feel like
gotten.
if
Yeah.
ones were gonna because I don't know, I'm not familiar with what Charlie Chan is about, but
They're
I
about
feel
70
like,
minutes apiece.
but
Yeah.
I feel like if they were made now, weren't they kind of problematic for back in the day?
Charlie Chan today is
Well,
a
you-
radioactive property. No one is touching that. There's no way.
Well,
Right.
do you get what I'm saying though?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Well, back then, I mean, it was Warner Oland playing Chinese.
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
know.
So I feel like at least with the Thin Man series, it could be made now and not be problematic, is what
Sure.
I was getting at.
Yeah.
Like, unless they were to remake the Charlie Chan stuff now and cast appropriately, like, it doesn't have
don't know.
that
I don't know.
looming dread of possible problematic. I'm not focusing on Charlie Chan. I'm just saying, like, it is
Yeah.
a property that could be made and not made necessarily in a problematic way. So
Right.
I could
And
see
there
its
are-
continuation possibly.
There are iterations of Chan that are more spot on down the road,
Good.
you know. And of course, the amazing Chan clan.
Oh,
Well, Hanna-Barbera shout out. But yeah, no, that was like one of the most popular genres at the time was the murder mystery.
oh yeah.
And
And I think we're getting that back, especially with the success of Knives Out, because we're getting a sequel to that, right? Almost. I feel like had it not been for the pandemic, probably would have been a lot quicker after the release of the first one. And I'm sure if I almost said Ryan Reynolds, oh my God, I can't think of his name. Ryan Johnson
yeah.
wanted to continue that for forever, people would not complain about that. You know what I mean?
Well, you could even say that leads into the Bond franchise later on, you know, being a viable. I mean, detective stories in a way became secret agent stories, you know, in the 60s. So it's like another version of that.
Dashiell Hammett himself wrote a.
Yeah.
I think
mean, he was
I think he
immensely
did.
popular, and it didn't matter what he wrote. I mean, people wanted to option it and make it into something.
Him and then Raymond Chandler after him. Yeah.
I don't know about, what do you feel? This is a first time watch for you, Katie, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
How did you feel about it? Did you enjoy it? Like, in what basis did you enjoy it the most? Is it like a mystery film or a comedy or what?
I feel like the comedy in it isn't like I'm sure back then it was considered a comedy. But like to me, just because it has comedic elements in it doesn't necessarily make it a comedy.
Well, I mean,
But
Hammett's
it's not
interpretation wouldn't have been comedic anyway.
okay. Then I wouldn't have
Not
considered like
necessarily.
I love their dynamic and I love their banter and their like playing back and forth. But this is definitely above and beyond a murder mystery, which I loved it. It was interesting though, like to hear, like, was it viewed audience wise as a comedy back then?
It was on the poster,
Because like,
I think.
but that's so
Well,
odd.
but also what you were saying earlier, neither of them were known comedically in terms of,
Right.
so like people weren't, that wasn't the draw at least. I think it was the Hammett influence was the draw.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a side note, it was a comedy.
I definitely liked it. I feel like it's extremely engrossing because up until the dinner party at the end, you're just consistently going, is it this person? Is it that person? Is it like it definitely I enjoyed it. Like and I probably will seek out the other ones now because I enjoyed this one as much as I did.
The sequels, I have to tell you, it's a diminishing return as you keep going with it. I mean, the third one wasn't even in 3D like it should have been. I don't know what happened there when they introduced the kid.
It was prior to the invention of 3D, probably.
Oh, was that
It was
it?
1939. It might have been. It might have been why.
That's 41.
I know, because you said the same complaint about Son of Frankenstein, same year.
That is the one where they introduced Nicky Jr., who's later played by Dean Stockwell in the
Yep.
final Thin Man movie.
Yeah. The final one has a crazy cast. It's got Keenan Wynn, Gloria Graham. They're all fun.
Is there a box set?
Yes, there's a DVD box set. That they're not. I don't think. Maybe the first one's on Blu-ray. I don't know if the other ones are.
I don't think it is. I've never seen it
Like
on
Warner
Blu-ray.
Archive.
I'd probably get the box set of it.
Yeah, it's fun going through them all, and I think watching them again. I didn't watch all 6 of them again. I watched the first 3, which to me is like the trilogy, because it's the same husband and wife team writing the scripts each time, and then they
After
left.
the third one, the
Van Dyke
director
only
died.
directed one more, committed suicide. Yeah,
The original writing team was not involved anymore. It just kind of feels like the last 2 were sort of struggling to, let's just do this. And I don't think Myrna Loy wanted to do them anymore at that point, really, but she had such a good time working with everybody that she kept coming back.
she was like very heavily involved in supporting the troops in World War II and going overseas and doing shows and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so
she was
like
on
the only films she really did during that time were the Thin Man movies. So in a way, that's kind of a testament.
Yeah, but I'm sure. Well, would there have also been like a contractual obligation?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Because with each one, they probably signed them on multiple times, and she was still probably a contract player to MGM at that point still. So they kind of routed what you did in the sense of you could choose projects, but here's the ones that are available.
What I found interesting about this movie is so many other people in the cast were themselves also into other franchises, particularly Maureen O'Sullivan, who plays Dorothy Wynant in this movie, was making a gob of Tarzan movies at the same time.
Was she in Tarzan the Ape Man?
Tarzan the Ape Man, Tarzan and His Mate, Tarzan Escapes. She was Jane in a whole bunch of these Tarzan movies, including Tarzan's New York Adventure.
Van Dyke directed that one.
That may be why.
You had Porter Hall, plays Macaulay, did a bunch of Bulldog Drummond movies. And of course, Cesar Romero, Chris Jorgensen, better known for a project he did much later on, Batman.
You know,
you thought I was going to say the Computer Wore Tennis Shoes just then, didn't you? But I could have.
Oh, there you go. There you go. He reminds me of young Christopher Lee in this. Like, he looks a lot like Christopher Lee.
I can definitely
Doesn't
see
get
that.
a lot of lines, but he has a presence in this movie for sure. When you first get that first shot of him, when he's like back to the camera sitting in that chair, you just kind of see someone's arm there on the chair, and when he gets up, you're like, oh crap, who's this guy?
Yeah.
And how about a shout out to the amazing
Which I ended up
William Henry as Gilbert. I loved that character.
That character. It gave me major Herbert West vibes, not gonna lie. Like the way that Jeffrey Combs played Herbert West. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if that guy did stage acting, because he was very, definitely more boisterous with his role than maybe the others. But I liked his character. Well, I liked his character as much as you are supposed to like his character.
Yeah.
It does seem kind of shoddy.
Oh gosh, just the whole.
But entertaining.
Only 1 in 4 of your children will turn out to be murderers. So you just stop having children after the third one, and you should be fine. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
My personal favorite scene is the party scene, the Christmas party scene, toward the beginning, when people just keep coming up to the apartment, to the point where she has to say, "Oh, don't bother calling, just send them up. They're all his friends." Because I've been to several parties like it.
I like just any time the two of them were on the screen, it was good.
Yeah.
Like, I like the scene where the guy comes in to be like, "Oh, I didn't kill her," and like he punches her in the face to get her out of the way of the shot. And then she's like, "Well, I wanted to see you do it." Like, I really like their dynamic. I can't stress that enough. I feel like had it been anyone else, or it just, you could tell their connection. Like, it definitely helped the film a lot. Well, I say that it's a good film. Like, I love the concept of, I don't know if it would have been as good with other people, but we'll never know, because that's not how.
Well, that's why I think you'll enjoy the sequels, because it's more of their world moving forward. You know,
you mentioned the.
I prefer a first sequel, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, like I said, the sequels kind of start and then slowly kind of march their way down a little bit. They don't seem to have the crackle that this first one did. I don't know if they just couldn't recapture it, or they did their best. I mean, they're not unwatchable movies by any stretch of the imagination. They have just gone to the well one too many times by the time they got to the end. Unless you didn't watch them, then they are unwatchable.
But that happens with sequels anyway. Like any of your major franchises that have multiple installments in them, at some point you're going to be like, wow, this didn't have what the original had, or even the first couple. They always get through that point where it's like, okay, they're clearly just making these for the money that they're going to bring in.
Yeah. The one too many syndrome is prevalent in many franchises.
Very few pull it off.
Nowadays.
Very few. I mean, Bond has kept going forever. They're still making Fast and Furious movies.
I think Bond succeeds in some ways, though, because they change it up. Like with bringing in the different actors for Bond and things like that. I feel like that's what helps that along.
Yeah. But essentially, it's the same template that they follow.
Yeah, cookie cutters. Is
World
what I
domination, bad guy.
I mean, that's also the MCU. That's
and it's the formula. Yeah, which is the same way with the Thin Man. I mean, it's like, you're going to have the same red herring scenarios, and you're going to have, there's always going to be a murder mystery that they're at the center of. Not unlike the Charlie Chan films or anything of that era, the Sherlock Holmes, Basil Rathbone films, which they did 12 of those. I mean, talk about running it.
But they're all fun,
if you enjoy them. Yeah.
Well, and sometimes with those types of films, you know what you're getting. They're like popcorn movies. You just turn them on, shut your brain off, and you're going to at least have a good time. It's not going to be one of those where maybe you sit down for like 2 weeks and you keep thinking about it and you can't get it out of your head. It's like, it's not necessarily that, but sometimes you just want to sit down and go, okay, it was a long week. Let's just have fun.
It's a good
hanging out with old friends.
It's a good tight 90. It's not like Netflix tried to do The Thin Man and make it into a 10-hour long series of the first movie or something like that. Come on, they would.
Wouldn't that suck? They just
oh my god.
Yeah, it'd be like every episode would be devoted to a potential murderer, and then you got to piece it together at the end in some dinner table sequence.
I do love the dinner table sequence. That was great.
Oh yeah, the part where he's like talking about how even fooled old Gil, and Gil's down at the end of the table like, you can skip that part. Love that. Everything with Gilbert was great.
I like the part where she's like, is that true? And he's like, I honestly have no idea. Like,
yeah, I love that he's not entirely sure going into that. He's going to come to the conclusion by the end of the dinner. Yeah.
And he has that confidence to like at least go along with it, even if it isn't necessarily true, because it may get him to the truth.
Right.
There's a lot of good quotable lines.
Already.
Yeah.
Like we're not watching him come into his own. Like I already like that he's already retired at this point, and he somehow gets roped into helping out with this.
Yeah. And that's the way I feel about the sequels is even though they're pre-established characters, they're even more so when you get into the first sequel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't take like the murder mystery at the beginning to get to meeting them, and it picks up right where the first one leaves off. So that's
cool.
It's kind of fun.
Doesn't the Jimmy Stewart is in that first sequel?
Is the dog in all of them?
The dog? Yes.
Yeah, Jimmy Stewart is. Yes, the dog is in all of them, although the dog only did 5 out of the 6.
Okay.
And then, you know, there's Asta Jr. as Asta.
Aww.
Also in the TV series, the credits are like Asta as Asta. Well, I don't know which dog that is, but it was kind of like the Benji syndrome at a certain point where it's always Benji, but it's a different dog.
I like that name, the Benji syndrome. I love that.
Well, the first Benji film, that dog died like right after they did it. It's kind of like Air Bud, you know?
Yeah.
And so the Benji that we know and love is pretty much For the Love of Benji through Benji the Hunted. It's like 11 years. And then that was it. And it was a female dog, by the way.
What, a Benji or Asta or both?
Benji.
Okay.
I don't know about Asta. Although in After the Thin Man, we get to meet Mrs. Asta. And they have a litter. So he really becomes more of a character in the sequels.
I mean, he was a character in this one.
Yeah,
like the part where he's like, my attack dog will attack you, and then he runs and hides. Like,
yeah.
There's a poster for the last movie, A Song of the Thin Man, Katie, where Asta is the largest thing on the poster. It's like this giant picture of Asta talking about how he's in this movie with these other people called Myrnoloy. And that pal guy.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know it based on the poster.
When you pull up the IMDb page for The Thin Man, one of the first pictures is him. And I get the impression he's like an award-winning dog, which I find hilarious. Because I feel like...
Nobel Prize, actually.
Let's see. He won a Nobel Prize. I'm pretty sure that's what I saw.
Well, also, when you market the film, you're looking at the family dynamic, especially years later in the sequels. So that may have been a gimmick for, you know, attracting
especially
children.
Back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's an award-winning movie dog. Along with Toto and... Oh, Benji. Benji's the other award-winning dog.
That makes sense.
No love for Rin Tin Tin? Or Wonton Ton, the dog who saved Hollywood?
Do you think the dog from White Dog is in it?
Ooh. I don't know about that one.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the massive variety of accents that are used in this thing. I mean, William Powell is still rocking what we called the Mid-Atlantic accent that had been used in movies for decades. I love all the gangsters have a very specific New York accent to them that you identify them immediately as who they are. The cops have it a little bit, but mostly the gangster types in the movie all speak exactly the same way and throw frying pans.
Yeah. And I like that Loy and Powell are kind of just in the middle. You could peg them as aristocratic society, but they don't take themselves seriously enough. You know what I mean? Like, especially in the party sequences and all that. That's where a lot of the fun is. They're just, you know, themselves. They don't pretend to be anything else, even though they totally could if they wanted to, you know, particularly her.
I think the scene where the guy is apologizing for the fact that the dinner party isn't going to go well because I'm assuming it was meant to be the cops undercover as like the wait staff. And that scene just made me laugh. And I think that kind of goes to with what you were saying about the accents and all, because instead of being like, oh, would you like a drink? The one guy's like, you're going to drink this drink. And it's like,
yes,
okay, just calm down.
How's this? Yes, monsieur. This is terrible. And they always do
that is very nice,
that
yes.
very like 30s, 40s gangster thing of appealing first to your hearing and then your sight, where they'll say, now listen, see, I had nothing to do with it. That kind of thing. Every single time. But it's good stuff. It works.
Yeah, and this actually, it feels like a Warner Brothers gangster picture in some sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like an MGM movie.
No, I would not have pegged this as an MGM movie at all. What other kind of stuff were they even doing in 34? They were still heavy on musicals, I thought. I didn't really know they were into murder mysteries or anything like that.
Well, there are musical numbers in the sequels, and then it feels more like...
I don't believe you. Are you serious? There's
They're
musical
not like
numbers.
It's not them performing it. I'm just saying they go to like a nightclub and there's an act that performs and it's like a 3-minute thing.
Oh, okay.
You know, so it's like that's their little shoehorn of we got to appease our musical audience by putting in a musical number.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, that would be ridiculous if they started outright solving the mystery in song.
I don't know. I would like that.
I mean, that might turn her off to watching Song of the Thin Man, but no, it's not a musical.
Oh, dang. Are there any other franchises where they kept the title that didn't really have anything, like with the Thin Man, where the original is that because that's the case he's solving, but they kept it somehow interlaced throughout it so people knew. Are there any other franchises where it was something similar, where you think like they kept something in the title to let you know it's part of it, even though that's not what it's about?
Oh, there's got to be. I can't think of one right now. No, I know what you're saying. It's
Blair Witch 2. No, I'm kidding.
I'm like one of the 5 people that actually like that movie.
I don't even remember if I liked it or not. That's how good it was, I guess. I don't know.
I remember seeing it in the theater. I don't remember anything about it. I think it was in color, and that's about it. That's about all I remember.
Yeah.
But no, I know what you mean, Kate. I can't think of anything right off. Wasn't the Andy Hardy movies?
That would be weird if Andy Hardy was no longer a part of the franchise.
Well,
it's just Mickey Rooney playing another character.
I was looking through the Van Dyke's other credits, which were Tarzan the Ape Man. There's one I got to see called Devil is a Sissy, but he also directed Andy Hardy Gets Spring Fever and Ants.
He Gets Spring Fever and Ants, or are those 2 separate films?
Yes, that's the full title.
I think there is a movie called Andy Hardy Gets Ants in His Pants.
Because there's a whole picnic sequence that goes awry. Yeah.
Also, Mina Gomble, who played Mimi Wynant Jorgensen in this movie, was in 2 movies that I've never seen, but I have to see now just based on the title. Women Must Dress and Mexican Spitfire Sees a Ghost. I have to know what that's about. I can't find it streaming anywhere, but I will find those movies. What the hell is that? Gotta know.
Have they ever been released on video?
I don't know. Everything's been released on video at some point by now, right?
No. Sadly, no. There's still some classics out there. They're just hanging in limbo. Yeah, this would be a good total box set on Blu-ray. I don't know that... This is... Warner Archive doesn't really do box sets. They just do they'll do collections, like 3-disc sets and 4-disc sets, but like an actual box set. I don't know if they've ever...
I don't know what's holding it back, really. I mean, there's still an audience for this somewhere, right?
Oh, definitely. I think murder mysteries are still as popular as they've ever been. Because there's so much you can do with it. It's not like it has to be... Yes, like when you get these franchises, they're very cookie cutter. But the premise of a murder mystery, you can do anything with that.
More flexible than...
Either relevant...
Yeah, it's more flexible than Westerns, I would think. I mean, Westerns had their heyday and then went away for a while. Sci-fi did the same thing for a brief period. You forget that between, say after 1967 or so, nobody wanted to make a sci-fi movie until Star Wars. It was a dead genre, pretty much, until then. We'll see the same thing will happen with superhero movies more than likely, too.
Well, it's interesting because I think some of your superhero stuff can now fall into maybe even the science fiction genre and things like
fantasy. It's just if you put that big umbrella over it, it's all relevant, really.
Well, yeah.
But like the murder mysteries is like crime never goes away, whether it's an action film or a mystery or a thriller. Those seem to be the most consistent next to comedy.
Oh,
the old
definitely.
the old Pinkerton man comes back.
Wasn't
was
Hammett
kinda
he was a Pinkerton?
He was a Pinkerton man, yeah.
Or no, was he?
He was.
Yeah.
Actually looked that one up this morning. Yeah, he was a Pinkerton man before he started writing. I think he took a lot of his stories from his
Which
experience
informed
out in the field.
his writing style, basically.
So this
Yeah.
is when Pinkerton was more of a private detective-based agency and not just into union busting, which they kind of turned into later on. There is still a Pinkerton agency around today. They're mostly involved in private security and not detective work anymore, but the Pinkerton agency is still around.
I feel like most of my favorite films were before I was born.
I was a little concerned you would not like this movie at all because it is it's not exactly a dated comedy in the way we think of like a lot of 80s comedies haven't aged well. Like, is there still
I didn't find anything in
a
this
connection there? Is there still a way to connect to that kind of comedy?
I didn't find anything in this that could have been considered like problematic or even like, because I try to watch things in the state of mind of, okay, this came out at this time. So I mean, clearly, like, maybe some of the things with the treatment, no, like, I didn't find anything about this, because I was going to say maybe the treatment of some of the women characters, but they're not even like, there's a bit where they're bantering Nick and Nora, and like he raises his hand at her, but it's like clearly that's they're playing around. Like I didn't find anything about this to be like distasteful or wow, this is clearly something that was released in 34. I didn't know.
Well, there are a couple of jokes that send you to Wikipedia, like when he says, "Have you heard of the Sullivan Act?" and she says, "No, that's okay, we're married." It's like, okay, I have to look up.
That's a great line. I love that line.
I mean, you can still laugh at it and think, okay, I probably should know what that is, but I don't have to go look it up. There's a couple of things like that, but overall, it's aged very, very well. It's not such a product of its time that you can't relate to it anymore, or relate to the humor in it anymore.
But I kind of don't agree with that.
Don't agree with which part, Nathan?
Oh, just the fact that people just, presume that it doesn't age well. Like if you watch
it was made at a certain time, it means it's automatically going to be problematic or something like that.
Right, but if you're you're watching it within the context, like Katie's saying, with that lens of that time frame, then I think you can enjoy anything potentially.
Right. But even then, I don't think that just because something was made before the 50s means it's going to inherently be racist or inherently be misogynistic. And there are some people that have that thought process that because it's an older film, it's got to have something like that in it. And that is not the case at all. Like, and just because something has misogyny in it doesn't mean it's inherently a bad thing, because sometimes you have to build a story with the things that might not be savory. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think like just because it has that in it doesn't mean, because you still get things now that broach racism or homophobia or misogyny, and it's building off of that. Just because it's an older film doesn't mean it's going to be problematic.
I think also a lot of people think of older comedies and they're thinking of like safe kind of stuff like Mr. Blandings Builds His Dream House or something like that, and forget just how risque the older movies could be. Right at the beginning of the production code, they could get away with a lot more stuff that you're just like, what the hell? What were they doing? This is fantastic. When Myrna Loy when he asks her, what were you doing in 1905? And she says, I was just a gleam in my father's eye. You couldn't do that joke in 1950. No way you were getting away with that. Yes, Myrna Loy was also in Mr. Blandings Built His Dream House. That's right. Which I adore. It's a fantastic movie, but it's not the same.
No, but she was a great crusader for rights also.
Housing rights,
she would
especially,
make it vocally known, like, why do black actors always have to play servants in films?
Right.
Mm-hmm. She'd raise those types of questions, and the same thing with women in film. So even if this had that embedded in it, she wouldn't have been attached to it.
Right.
If there were any problematic elements of that nature. So,
It does make you wonder if it possibly at some point had it in it and maybe it was removed. I really don't consider this movie a comedy.
yeah, I almost don't either. No.
Like, it has comedic things in it, but that doesn't inherently make it a comedy.
Right. They're reacting to the situations in a comedic fashion, but very much everything else is played straight, and they're just within this little situation, this world. And I think that's, to me, that's what the comedy is. It's just their reaction.
And it's mostly between them.
Right. No, it's not overtly comedic. No. You could even watch this and not even laugh at all in it. You could just watch it straight through. You know what I mean? If you're not looking for it, some people don't pick up on that kind of stuff, particularly in the films of the 30s. Like, I think that's lost on a lot of generations now, where they just view it for what it is, and they don't really pick up on, oh, that's supposed to be comedic.
Well, and then you also have the opposite of that, where people watch things that were made back in the day that weren't meant to be funny and watch it now and think it's like the most hilarious thing in the world. And it's like,
two words on that one. That's why madness.
Well, I just think it's Suspiria.
Not supposed to be funny.
When I saw Suspiria with Goblin doing the orchestrated bits, there was this one guy in the audience who was just like cackling the whole time, and it's like, this isn't a funny movie. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
There's no lines like, what's that man doing in my drawers and giving the spit take? None of that.
That I did like. But it's like the first Evil Dead wasn't supposed to be what it is now. Maybe more so with the second one, but definitely not the first one. That is why I watch things in the lens of when they were made.
Right.
Because things are made at a different level, if that makes sense. So it's like some things could be seen as comedic because maybe they didn't have the effect stuff that we do now, or the things like that. But what were you going to say?
No, it was just a reverse on what you were saying about the Evil Dead. Was it 1998? I went to like the midnight screening of Lucio Fulci's The Beyond, when Grindhouse Releasing and Tarantino's Rolling Thunder, they put it back in theaters. And at any rate, they had a great pre-movie. They had all these vintage trailers, and they're all movies I love for whatever reason, but they would show like Massacre Mafia style. They would show Detroit 9000. They would show Cannibal Ferox, and they showed the Evil Dead trailer. And what happened was everybody laughed at every trailer, like nonstop. And I'm trying to enjoy, because it was 35 millimeter back then. It wasn't digital projection. And I'm like, this is fucking amazing. Like, I didn't count on this being part of the presentation. And they're laughing throughout. But once the Evil Dead trailer played, nobody laughed, which I thought was interesting.
Wow.
I was like, oh, okay. And then we went into the Beyond, and they started laughing. So I was like, ugh, whatever.
This is part of the reason why I don't necessarily miss movie theaters.
Right. Yeah, even with the pandemic, there's always a dick in the audience. Like,
it's
really?
horrible. I saw Candyman.
I saw that too. 1992, Virginia Manson. Oh, wait, yeah. We've gone from the Thin Man to the Candy Man. So, well, if Candyman had met the Thin Man might not be so thin because he'd be eating candy all the time. No?
At first, I was wondering how you were going to do that, completely just forgetting the fact that his name was Candyman, and I just thought of bees and honey, so I just pictured the Thin Man eating tons of honey.
You were giving me more credit than I deserved. You were like, this is going to be good, and then it ultimately was shit. Yes.
No.
No, they could bond together over that Jack Daniel's honey whiskey.
Oh, yeah, because he does love drinking.
There's a spin-off here. Yeah. You could have a CGI William Powell.
That's how they bring the Thin Man back.
Yeah, the movie was made the year after the official end of Prohibition, and several years after anybody was taking it seriously anyway. So yeah, there was a staggering amount of drinking going on in this movie.
I like the part where he's like, I don't want to work on this case because it's going to keep me from my drinking. And I'm just like, all right.
Yeah, that's kind of an undercurrent. They don't.
Doesn't carry through in the sequels.
I mean, he's pretty much an alcoholic. They don't really.
Oh, so is she. Like,
Yeah,
they
but
both
more.
are.
I think he is more so because there's comments throughout the franchise where she's like, "How many did you have, martinis?" And he's like, "I had
And
like
then-
6."
6, and then she drinks 5 more on top of her one.
Yeah, it's like she's competing with him just to do it.
I love
but
their relationship. Like, I can't stress that enough. The whole time I'm watching it, I was like, relationship goals. Like, these two are amazing.
It's a huge reason why the movie has endured all these years. It's you say Nick and Nora Charles to anybody, they're gonna almost anybody would know exactly who you're talking about because of those characters.
I don't.
Yeah, well,
I
maybe
think
not
it's
so much now.
Most people, especially my age, if you say Nick and Nora, they're gonna say Infinite Playlist. They're
Yeah.
gonna go that route. Because up until you putting this season together, I had never heard of this movie. Because remember, I went, "Ooh," because I thought of Thinner. The Stevie. That's what I thought of. Because I had never.
That's the Thinner Man. Yeah.
The Thinner Man. But yeah, I had no idea about this. Hell, I didn't even know until we recorded this right now that it was even a series. I thought it was just a one-off.
You got more to watch. Powell and Lloyd did another movie. The hell was it? It was the same year as After the Thin Man. Oh, Libeled Lady. That's a good
Libeled
one,
Lady.
too.
I was thinking My Man Godfrey, but she wasn't in that one.
No, that was Carol Lombard, which she was married to Powell, I think, wasn't she?
I don't know.
I think previously yeah. I mean, all his stuff was consistently worth watching. Like, going into like the 50s when he's doing like Mr. Roberts and stuff like that. And is that it, kids?
Yes, I think with that it is time to end. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time.
I see you, you see me. Watch you blowing the lines when you're making a scene. Oh, girl, you've got to know what my head over.
That's it. The show is over. Thank you for listening. The Smooth Thrills Radio Hour is a production of Ghostcraft and is recorded live in Dallas, Texas. Please email your questions and comments to autopilot@smooththrillsradiohour.com. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Watching you, arriving eyes. And watching you.
This has been a Ghostcraft presentation.